Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of What's the Word. Today is Monday, July 13th, 2020, and the word comes from Hebrews 13:5, which reads, "Let your character be free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he has said, I will never desert you, nor will I forsake or let you down or relax my hold on you." Kicking off today's episode with a bit of scoreboard watching, and since this is my first time doing that on this platform, as well as for my new following, scoreboard watching is pretty much what it sounds like. I take a look at the scores and results from around sports. But since we finally have some action to talk about, let's get to it. D.C. United's match against Toronto FC, originally scheduled for Friday and initially postponed to Sunday, was postponed once again after COVID-19 testing for both sides produced an unconfirmed positive as well as an inconclusive test. The good news, however, is that follow-up tests for both players came back negative, and the match was played today. However, DC United did not get off to a great start, going down 2-0 before the first half and even losing a player after Junior Moreno was shown a red card. In the second half, however, the Black and Red were able to rally with just 10 men and secure the draw, getting a goal from Federico Higuain on a beautiful through pass in the 84th minute, then getting the equalizer from Frederic Briand via the set piece. My analysis of the match, it was pretty sloppy, to be honest, as most of the matches have been for MLS's back. DC United was outpossessed most of the time, looking to chase the ball, and their strong suit, which is defense, was very lacking this game, especially on the back line. However, the back line did redeem themselves with Frederic Briand getting the goal initially headed by Steven Birnbaum. So at least they can say that they fought back for the draw, which in this case is very important considering one team in their group got a win, which equals 3 points, and obviously DC United and Toronto FC drew, which gives them a point apiece. But for DC United's next match, they will play the New England Revolution. That match now taking place on the 17th, that being Friday at 8 p.m. The match was initially scheduled for the 16th, but they moved it back because of the postponements. Moving on to Fight Island, UFC 251 kicked off the slate of action in Abu Dhabi, and I'm going to start with the main event. Kamaru Usman defeated Jorge Masvidal by unanimous decision to retain his welterweight championship. For a lot of people, the fight was pretty boring, but for me, it's exactly what I expected. Jorge Masvidal, being more of a striker, did get a few good shots in, but Kamaru Usman pretty much dominated the fight with his wrestling and his grappling, holding Masvidal against the fence for the majority of the fight. After the fight, Gamebred did go up to Usman and say he'd like to run it back, and I'm a fan of that. I'd like to see Masvidal get a full camp, not have to cut 20 pounds in a matter of 6 days, and just be all around more prepared for that match. But the fight before that, in my decision, Max Holloway got robbed via split decision to Alex Volkanovski, who made his first defense of his featherweight championship. After the fight, Dana White, UFC's president, was pretty critical of the judges in a press conference, saying, quote, "You can't leave it to these guys. We have some bad judging." And visually, I'd agree. To me, it looked like Max Holloway won the fight, but after looking at the stats, it might have actually gone Volkanovski's way. I will say that Holloway probably won the first 2 rounds, but in the final 3 rounds, and the championship rounds especially, Volkanovski definitely upped the ante. But looking at the stats, Volkanovski outlanded Holloway 139 to 111, landing 50% of his strikes compared to Holloway's 40. And he also landed 137 significant strikes versus Holloway's 102. The last point I want to make is that Holloway had some pretty good takedown defense, but stuffing 6 of the 9 attempts, but Volkanovski still had 3 compared to Holloway's 0. So looking at the stats, you probably have to give it to Volkanovski. But after the fight, asked by the media if there'd be a third fight, Dana White was pretty non-committal. The fight before that saw Peter Yan get awarded the previously vacant bantamweight belt after his TKO of Jose Aldo in the 5th round. My only commentary on that one is that the refs should have stopped it sooner, as Jose Aldo pretty much took a pounding the last 2 minutes without defending himself. For the 2 non-title fights on the main card, in the second of those, Rose Namajunas defeated Jessica Andrade by split decision in their rematch. The fight was Thug Rose's first since losing her strawweight belt to Andrade back in May of 2019. And although Rose Namajunas got her revenge, Andrade previously lost the belt to current champion Weili Zhang, so Namajunas has one more opponent in the way of getting her belt back. And for the first fight of the main card, Amanda Ibas submitted Paige Van Zandt via armbar to win that flyweight bout. The prelims were pretty entertaining for me. It started off with a TKO, ended with a TKO, and had a submission in between. And I'll get to that. In the first fight of the prelims, Davey Grant, making his UFC debut, knocked out Martin Day in the very first round. The next notable decision was Makwan Americana submitting Danny Henry via the Anaconda. And as I mentioned, the final fight of the prelims was a TKO for UFC debutant Yuri Pochevsky over the number 7 heavyweight contender Volkan Ozdemir. For the UFC, their next pay-per-view, UFC 251, will be on August the 15th, and that will be headlined by Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic Part 3. Miocic obviously being the heavyweight champion and Daniel Cormier being the contender. But before that can happen, Fight Island has 3 more events, namely fight cards happening this Wednesday the 15th, followed by the 18th and the 25th. Then one more fight card happening on August the 1st before UFC 252 can take place. On to hockey. The National Hockey League announced its schedule for the Stanley Cup qualifiers on Friday. And according to the league, players have until today to inform their teams if they plan to opt out of the restart. For the Washington Capitals, who of course have already secured a playoff spot, they will play their first game of the NHL seeding round robin on Monday, August 3rd against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The schedule then sees them play the Philadelphia Flyers on August 6th, followed by the Boston Bruins on August the 8th. Moving on. Maryland football suspended its voluntary team workouts after 9 of 185 fall sports student athletes tested positive for COVID-19. I mentioned in my last podcast that the Big Ten, which is the conference housing Maryland, was going to look to do conference games only in the fall, but we'll see if that'll even happen. And rounding out the episode with the biggest news of the day, following a thorough review of the team's name, the Washington NFL franchise released a statement saying, quote, "We will be retiring the Redskins name and logo." Also, they said Dan Snyder and Coach Rivera are working closely to develop a new name and design approach that will enhance the standing of our proud, tradition-rich franchise. So the day has finally come. Although they haven't announced the name, they did say that they will retire the name and logo. The funny thing about the statement was that they still use the logo and name multiple times. But I digress. As I said, they haven't actually announced the name. So I finally have my take for you guys on what I think the name should be. So over the past week or so, social media has really jumped on the Washington Red Wolves name, and for me, that just doesn't do it. The Red Wolves name to me is pretty cheesy, and it probably won't happen anyway, as Arkansas State University has Red Wolves already as its mascot, and they own the trademark on that name. But I will finally give you guys my take. I think my two front runners would be Washington Warriors for the alliteration and Washington Red Tails, obviously paying respect to the Tuskegee Airmen. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of What's the Word? God bless. And maybe for the last time, HTTR.